coming your way. Coming through.
Hi, Sherry. Well,
Hey, Steve.
yeah, thanks for joining me again, and also just thanks for the privilege of being a part of the Red Wolf team. Like, when I first came to work at the museum, I never expected that I'd be able to be a part of that. It's super cool.
Well, you're welcome. I'm glad you think of it as a privilege because I feel that way too.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. So I guess I wanted to talk a little bit about what we did in that wolf catch up. So what happened while we were out there? What were we doing?
Yeah, having red wolves, one of the most endangered species on the planet, and the species that's very shy, and is part of a recovery program, meaning that animals are scheduled to be released to the wild, means that we have very little involvement with them. We want to be hands-off. So the once a year when we go in to catch them up for their physical means that it's an ordeal to get animals to move where we want them to go as quickly and as safely as possible. So as you know, it's a big team
Yeah.
who
there's a
go
lot of us
in.
in there.
There's at least usually 15 of us that gather up and don the materials and make a plan and head out to, as quickly and safely as possible, corral and gather the wolves and crate them really, really quickly.
Yeah. And so I think in our catch up that day, we saw one wolf go into the den, and then we saw another wolf end up in their kind of side area where.
Yeah.
And so those were the kind of two spaces where they ended up getting
Right.
corralled to. Yeah.
And both those spaces are great spaces to have a wolf go. They're, the den, a wolf runs in. Our den is, a covered dark mound that's about 5 foot in diameter of space. So the wolf gets in there, and from a 5 foot area, you can easily gather them up a few different ways to get them into a crate. You can kind of push them out, because red wolves, their fight or flight response is strong, meaning their flight response is strong. And then once they get cornered, they tend to go passive. And so at that point, with this wolf, I think it was Ellerby that ended up in the den, we had two options. First, we tried to push it out through a narrow opening to walk right into a crate, and it seemed like Ellerby said, no.
Don't want to do that.
Don't want to do that. And so what we did was we moved the crate to the back door and used some of our tools, a hoop stick or a noose pole, to really get a good grip on the wolf and quickly pull it out and get it into the crate, and then it's calm. The wolf's calm and contained. For Eno, who ended up in our, what we call our side cage area, an area that's about 10 foot by 10 foot, so 100 square feet of space, as compared to the wolf habitat, which is about 14,000 square feet. We had it in a small space. We actually put a crate in there, and the wolf ran right into the crate. Because really what the wolves want to do, their flight response is so strong. They want to get away. If they can't get away, their fight response is actually pretty weak, and so they just give up. So the wolf going into the crate, we watched it run right into the crate. We closed the door and said, whew, catch part over, yay.
And that kind of is what's really helpful about that moment of having those things be quick, having them be kind of easy, is that they reduce kind of stress for everyone, which is healthier for everyone. There's less risk, there's less potential harm from the stress itself, but also just potential harm from kind of poor decision making that might happen on either a wolf or a person.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of the great things about talking with you. You're part of our catch-up team. You actually, I don't have to explain to you the risk reward, making the process go as quick as possible. That keeps the stress down on the humans and the wolves. And so a quick, rapid catch to a nice, slow calm is going to be much better than a drawn-out, lengthy, how long is this going to take to catch up?
Totally.
Yeah.
You mentioned that in general we try to keep this species particularly, we don't want to be engaging with them all the time because ultimately we want this species to stay wild.
Right.
So what are some of the reasons that we do decide to engage with them and in this case catch them up?
Yeah, and there's really three main reasons why we catch them up. One is if we had to transfer them to another institution. If they're leaving, we have to break them up. Two is if there's an injury. We have a very natural forest, wooded environment here in Durham. We got copperheads. We've had our wolves, for example, get bitten by copperheads, and maybe we need to do some treatment. So we might have to catch them up for some sort of treatment or medical care. And really the main reason, in a perfect year for the red wolf, we're only touching them once, and that's for their annual physical. Because even though we want them to be as wild as possible, is really afraid of people because they are a recovery species, meaning they are a endangered species protected in the United States under the Endangered Species Act to try and recover them in the wild. But they're still in our care here at the museum. We still need to make sure they have their veterinary care and that they're good going, are they gaining weight the way they need? Are we noticing any issues? Are they getting their vaccines? They need their rabies vaccines and other vaccines to keep them safe. We're taking blood not just to see are they apparently healthy, but also for the conservation and good of the species. We're taking blood and other biofacts and banking them for future use.
Thank you so much for the experience that we've just witnessed. Can you tell me who you are and some of what we just saw?
Sure. I'm Dr. Tara Harrison. I'm a veterinarian with the veterinary school at NC State. And what we did is we anesthetized the wolves for a physical examination.
And so you probably work with loads of different animals, but you do a lot of work, it sounds like, with specifically red wolves. And I was wondering how you ended up in that kind of world.
Yeah, so I've been working with the red wolves and the red wolf species survival plan, which they're part of. So that's the managing the breeding for all of the population of red wolves in the entire United States. And so we're working with that, and we also have a red wolf colony that we work with over at the veterinary school that we help to manage and is also part of the breeding program. Cool. So with these populations, we're hoping that we can ultimately increase the population of red wolves as a whole and perhaps hopefully be able to release some out into the wild.
That would be awesome. So I guess I also wanted to ask you just a quick question about how you ended up kind of falling in love with science or with veterinary medicine, or if that's just kind of just always been a part of your life, or if you can recall anything kind of that set you in that path, or something that made you really curious.
Yeah, I've always been very interested in zoos and conservation of endangered species, and in fact I wanted to be a zookeeper when I was 13 years old, and my parents said, well, I don't think you should do that. So I said, fine, I'll be a zoo vet. And so that's why I went to vet school, and I was a zoo vet prior to coming to NC State. So I've been working with endangered species pretty much my entire veterinary career.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
And what a wild, I guess it just seems so strange for us as human beings to be both, in many cases, like literally threatening many animals, but also to have the kind of power to also help those same species. It's got to be really weird to be in that space of where you're really working hard to, I feel like in a way, undo some of what we've done. To work on the other side. We've spent so many years kind of either fragmenting habitat or actively hunting red wolves, for example.
Right.
To work on the other side. It just seems like such an important thing to do as a human being.
It's very important, and it is. It's undoing some of the damage that we've already done, and it's very special and very great to be able to do that. And I'm honored to be able to be a part of it.
Yeah, and yeah, even though you've dedicated a life to this, I got to spend a few minutes with you, but even that was incredibly miraculous. So thank you
Excellent. You're
for
welcome.
letting me participate and for sharing your thoughts with me.
My
Thanks.
pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. So, Dr. Nagashima, thanks for involving me in your research, for one. So, thank you especially for, I did not expect to be able to literally participate. And,
Awesome.
so that was a particularly amazing experience for me to be a part of, to be in that room was awesome. So, tell me a little bit about what kind of work you've been doing with the Red Wolf Species Survival Plan and just conservation work in general, and maybe then we can get to a little bit of how you even got involved in that work.
Yeah, sure. So, hi, I'm Jennifer Nagashima. I'm a postdoctoral fellow with the Smithsonian Conservation Biology Institute, which is out in Front Royal, Virginia, about 4 hours from here.
Oh, cool.
And what we do is, our motto is we save species, and the goal of our program is to develop, well, to breed endangered species, but also to develop technologies that can be used to assist the repopulation or for creating more individuals of an endangered animal.
Totally.
And my focus particularly is on canids, which can be dogs, wild dogs, foxes, wolves, jackals. But today we're doing some work with some endangered red wolves, which are native to this area, which is really exciting.
Yeah, that is super exciting. It's been a privilege to be able to be a part of the kind of team of folks that helps catch them up for examinations and for other work, including your research
Running
over the
around
years.
out there all the time.
Yeah, it's been, it's just, it's cool to be working with such an endangered species, and it's a North Carolina native,
Yes.
and they're just incredibly majestic animals in the first place. It's
Fluffy and beautiful.
yeah, right. They're the classic, kind of charismatic megafauna.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
But it is really a privilege to work with them. Can you tell me a little bit about how you got involved in this program?
Yeah, so I was always interested in animals and animal conservation. I watched a lot of Animal Planet growing up.
Nice.
And really fell in love with endangered species and particularly endangered carnivore work. And one of the things that I got really excited about when I was in my undergraduate career was the different laboratory techniques that could be used to save species. So you hear a lot about people going out into the field and doing ecology, survey stuff with animals or tracking. But I really like the science that was in the laboratory with the microscopes and all that jazz, and particularly developing new technologies that could be used to support conservation from the laboratory side.
When we're talking about conservation, a lot of people haven't heard of red wolves. And in North Carolina, that's a shame because this is the only place this animal is found on the planet, is here in North Carolina. In the wild, the only place red wolves live is here in North Carolina. But people don't know of them. And I say, do you know of pandas or polar bears? People are like, yeah, I know what a polar bear is. Polar bears are incredibly endangered, and there's about 10,000 of them, and that's considered incredibly endangered.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, well, pandas, you've heard of a panda, right? They're really endangered, and there's about 1,200, and that's a teeny amount. And then I'm like, so let's talk about red wolves. There's less than 300 red wolves on the planet. And so when you can take an animal, I've heard of polar bears and pandas, and I've even heard of the struggle of polar bears. The warming environment, the ice flows going away. Polar bears, that number, sadly, is going to plummet. When you can say, red wolf, polar bear, those numbers are drastically different, that helps build a connection and understanding of how small 300 really is. It's about 250 in captivity and only about 20 in the wild. So it's less than 300 of these animals on the planet today.
That is wild. What is the role that the museum plays with this species? What is our connection to them, and what do we do?
Yeah, great question. Well, we're a science museum, so we believe in using science as a way of knowing about the world around us. The museum we started with the Red Wolf Recovery Program back in 1992. We decided that it was important to have native animals here at the museum, have an endangered species, and be part of a recovery program. this is a species survival plan program, an SSP, which is, it just means a group of facilities or institutions like zoos or nature centers, maybe sanctuaries, coming together to collectively try and save the species. So the museum is one of 42 institutions around our country that work together and say, not our animal, it's our
Right.
animal, and we want to use our collective expertise, our collective resources, and we want to try and recover the species to help teach people about the species, to help build that connection, that relationship, that joy, that passion. Look at that wolf. That is one of, 270 of these, and I saw it. So that's the museum's involvement. And even as recently as last week, there was a wild wolf. So one of these 20 wild wolves that got hurt and needed surgery and is now recovering in a captive setting. And the museum provided food for that wolf.
Cool.
Because it's a wild wolf. We don't want it eating canned dog food. We want it eating deer parts or other species that it would be out in the wild. So we are contributing by having wolves here at the museum for our guests and members to see and learn about, by breeding wolves and making more, and by even supporting wild wolves indirectly with relationship building, and even directly of providing food so that these wolves can recover if they end up in a bad situation like this female did.
Yeah, that's so cool. Thanks for sharing that. That's the first time you told me that. That was cool.
Yeah, it just happened.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Sherry. This has been an awesome conversation about conservation, about red wolves, about the museum's connection to the red wolf species survival plan, and I will just thank you again for the personal privilege of being such a having the opportunity to be so embedded within that in ways that I never expected, and it's really cool to share that story with everyone too.
Well, it is, as you said, I've been here a long time. I've been involved with this story, and it is, it's an important story to me. So to be able to share it with all sorts of people, and people I know who are passionate about it, and who I've been able to help onboard and see sort of the amazing little, big, surprising, amusing, difficult stories. It's a great story to share. So thank you.
Yeah, sure.